taught us the mask was for our protection, but we're finding out that true safety starts when we take it off. I'm Gerron Scott, and this is Black and Diagnosed. This is a sanctuary for the mind, a space built for those navigating the world with labels like ADHD, bipolar, anxiety, and depression. We're moving past the clinical whispers to have honest conversations about our lived reality. Pull up a seat, catch the vibe, and join us in the garden. Welcome back to another episode of Black and Diagnosed. We're here with Della Roderick. I'm going to allow her to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I am Della Roderick. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor in the state of Maryland and the founder and CEO of August Rose Health Center, an outpatient mental health clinic and psychiatric rehabilitation program.
That is awesome. That is a lot. We're going to unpack all of that because you are the CEO and founder of something that is amazing and helping the community. But before we jump into that, what is your favorite childhood memory?
Oh, that my favorite childhood memory has to be, I need to think on that one. I would say hanging out with one of my older brothers and sitting outside. I think we both had like our afternoon snack and toys, and we were just sitting back and talking about how strong my father was. He was did some like weightlifting or powerlifting back in the day, so he was just this humongous guy. And then especially to us as little kids. So just sitting on the back porch and reminiscing, well, not reminiscing, but as a little kid, just talking about, my father can lift a house and he can lift a car and he can lift a house on top of a car and doing all of those things. So it was a good time.
That is awesome. As kids, we often see our parents like, they can do anything. And that's awesome that we see that. Let me ask you this. If you could be any part of the bicycle, what part of the bike would you be?
Oh, that's a good question too. If I could be any part of the bicycle, I would be the pedals to keep things moving forward, or backwards if we need to go backwards too. I would be the pedals.
That's good. I like that.
What about you? What would you be? That's a good question.
What would I be? I'd be the handlebars or the steering column. I'd like to steer the direction. I don't need to determine the speed, but I want to determine where we're going. And I think I'm good at leading organizations and people in the right direction. Sometimes if we're partying, it might be in the wrong direction. Shout out to all my friends who I make bad decisions with, but they end up in good times. I got a couple of friends where we get together and it's just like, let's always go left instead of right.
Those wonderful side quests, right?
I love a good side quest. Oh man, I have a calendar full of side quests already for the year. I'm going to learn how to swim, learn how to golfing. I want to make bread. The podcast is a side quest. So many side quests. So what is a side quest for you this year? What's one side quest and adventure you want to go on this year?
Oh, so funny story. I do want to make bread. I have a bread maker in my Amazon cart right now. And then I want to do glass blowing. I have a Groupon for flight lessons. So I want to fly a plane. And then I want to get back to Utah and do that. And then I want to go to Guatemala to climb the active volcano. And then skydiving is on the list sometime over the next couple of weeks. I haven't quite bought the tickets yet, but it's happening. I'm going to make my brothers jump out of the plane with me and my niece too. So yeah. And then the Azores, that is definitely on my list this year as well. I tried to get out of the country, but the flights right now were just not a good price, but that's happening too. Mm-hmm.
These flights right now are not happening. They are not good flights prices. I went skydiving for my 22nd birthday. That seems like a long time ago when I say it, but it was such a blast. It was top 10 activities. There's some activity. It was top 5, but there's some other things that bumped it down. But it was so exhilarating. You're nervous. Then the plane starts taking off, and that just turns to straight adrenaline. Then you jump out, and it's just so you're falling. Then you just in the air. I would say this: if you want to go hang gliding first. Like,
Really? Oh, I was gonna go. They have spots in Brazil that I've seriously done some research thanks to TikTok, done some research and have seriously contemplating it. But I wanted to jump out the plane first. How did you breathe up there? I think that's my biggest thing, not being able to breathe.
they told you just keep your head up, like forward and straight. But okay, I don't want to dissuade you from going hang gliding. So it just for me, it felt like hang gliding was very like scenic. It was like in a way, it was like a gondola ride. Like it's just almost kind of like if you were there with a significant other, almost like date like compared to skydiving. It's very chill. But by comparison, it's not chilling on its own, but by comparison, it's chill.
Huh. Where did
Um,
you go?
I did that in Chattanooga, Tennessee, I think.
Okay, okay. Was that a side quest too?
Yeah, me and a few friends, some buddies did it. It was pretty cool. I love a good side quest. You said glass blowing. So
Yes.
did you do it or you just want to get into it?
So I keep making appointments to go, but lives. And there's a place maybe an hour away from where I live now that I have been meaning to get to, but I haven't gotten to it yet. But all of those things will definitely happen this summer.
I want to do pottery. Like I just feel like the most millennial thing is bread making and pottery. I know other generations have done it, but I feel like I didn't make pottery during COVID and I didn't make bread during COVID. I did wake up and eat a bagel and drink a beer every day for like 2 months straight. But I thought the world was gonna end, so I'm like, might as well eat a bagel and drink beer, right?
Right?
Wake up and just do that. But
hmm
let's see.
It's funny. I have done pottery. I will say that I probably did it for 2 months and then I just stopped going. I didn't feel like I was getting any better. So I just stopped. I was like, okay, next thing, glass blowing. And so that's been on my list.
What did you make when you did pottery?
Just bowls, really lopsided, terrible bowls. I couldn't ever get it to like stretch the clay to stretch enough to make it into like a vase or something. And they were like, you got to keep trying, or you add too much water, and then it wasn't. It was fun. It was definitely relaxing. For a little bit, I contemplated going on Amazon and getting your own little spinner for the pottery, but it's still in my Amazon cart.
My Amazon cart is crazy. Or another side quest. I want to make homemade cider, hard cider. Like I have
Oh.
all the stuff on a list. It only costs like $40 to get started. I looked it all
Mhm.
up. I've been on YouTube. Like that after I set up my fish tank, I'm gonna do cider, hard cider. That's my next side quest. What is your favorite 90s sitcom?
So I'm gonna be really boring here. And actually, I didn't really watch too much TV as a kid. I was outside. I was outside all of the time. So I didn't really watch TV. I still really don't watch TV. If anything, TikTok is my TV. Maybe sometimes Instagram, but not really. But what about you? What was your fave?
Living Single. So I need you to go watch Living Single every episode. No spoilers, but it's hilarious from
hmm
beginning to end. You got to watch it. So that's if I can any takeaway from this episode for you is you got to watch Living Single. It's great.
I will take that recommendation. I was super, I grew up in a house with like 16 people at any given time and like maybe only two or three TVs in the house, if that. And we just would fight over my brothers. And I was outside. I was outside in the backyard making mud pies most of my childhood.
Right. So tell us about your clinic, the name, the location, how it got started.
Yeah. So, August Rose Health Center was established in 2018. So we are about to celebrate our 8th year anniversary. And so we started off as a psychiatric rehabilitation program only. The backstory to that is I, as a clinician, worked at various outpatient clinics, substance use programs, residential programs, and so on. And I ultimately saw a lot of red tape and or individuals not being seen as a whole person, and areas of their lives not being addressed because maybe it wasn't a billable service or it wasn't something that the community had available at that time. And so that combined with me doing a lot of consulting work, so that other programs could improve the quality of services that were being delivered and looking at balancing what the policies and procedures were for that specific organization, as well as state and federal compliance. There's just a lot of red tape along the way. So I was like, you know what? I could do this. I can navigate this. This is possible. And that is where, that's when August Rose was born, I should say. And there is a lot of red tape. There's still very much a lot of red tape, rightfully so in some regards, because the standard of care needs to be met. But also being able to make sure you see the human behind the service, behind the billing code, behind the diagnosis, and so on. There is a human being on the other side of that. And so 2018, we started August Rose. And then it was a PRP only program for adults and for children. And in 2024, we expanded to add on our outpatient mental health clinic. And now we're in 2026, so we're going to expand again to add on our substance use programming.
That is amazing. So let's unpack unpack tape, unroll or peel off the tape. What do you do with tape? I think you peel it off. Um, so let's peel off that red tape. Tell me a little more about that red tape.
So sometimes the systems, as we know, are not designed with us in mind or the human being in mind. Sometimes the system is designed for the benefit of maybe the pharmacy company or the benefit of something or someone else. And so we are trying to cut or unravel that tape by making sure that everybody has access to care that they deserve and is a reflection of, again, them being a human being, not just a 45-minute session, not just a billing code, not just a diagnosis, and really sitting with that person for as long as we need to, and connecting them to the resources that the system might not even tell you is there, or kind of denies you access to, just simply because you didn't ask the right set of questions or things along those lines. And so it's been very, very intentional about navigating it to, again, make sure people are aware, they are educated on what is available to them, and then actively connected to their entitlements, right? And so that could look like understanding what an individual education plan is as it relates to a child's mental health diagnosis, and helping the family navigate what that is and advocate for those things, or even like a 504 plan. If your child is having behaviors in school, there's a diagnosis, it's causing these behaviors. Let's navigate the education system in that way from our organization's kind of perspective. It can look like that adult that, really does have a severe and persistent mental illness symptom presentation that is impacting their capacity to independently function in the community, and making sure that they have resources available, or they're connected to those resources so that they can live as independently as possible given their symptom presentation. And so it's a lot of advocacy. It's a lot of navigating the systems, and they're cutting sometimes the red tape. Sometimes it's also creating the programming that may benefit that client in that moment.
Yeah, one of the things you said is spending time as much time as you possibly can with that person if it's needed. One of the things that frustrates me with dealing with my psychiatrist is I get it; they have a lot of class they need to get to, but it's a 20-minute uh, session, and it's just like sometimes I need 25 minutes. I got some stuff to say, right? And it's hard because I don't need to mute my psychiatrist every month. It's like every few months, but it's just like I need to catch you up because we may need to adjust what we're doing. And it's kind of like I got to give you the TLDR version of everything in 20 minutes. And sometimes I can't remember what I've done 2 months ago and to the end of the session. So that's a little, I do find that a little frustrating. So, what are some ways that people could could work with the psychiatrist or the therapist or whoever to bridge that gap?
Mhm. Mm. So my mind instantly goes to making sure that you're telling your provider exactly what it is that you're hoping for. And if in that moment you're wanting more time, well, I think I would say tell them ahead of time, hey, I really want a 30-minute session or a 25. For us at August Rose, our medication management sessions are scheduled for 30 minutes. And so we do take that extra time with the client, but telling the provider, hey, this is what I need. This is really what I need. Outside of that, if you're still feeling a little bit rushed and wanting to make sure that your provider is kept in the loop, there are I'm about to tell them how to run their company. I was going to say there are some systems that we use here, so we can track some kind of the client's symptoms outside of the session. I always encourage individuals to journal, to track their mood changes so that when you're coming to that medication management session, you have like that month or 2 months um, amount of data so that they can review that so that the session is a little bit more impactful, fruitful, and you can make any adjustments accordingly. But advocacy um, ahead of time before that appointment so that provider knows you want a little bit more time. And if that provider is really not working out for you, then I would say to switch.
Yeah, thank you for that. So, oftentimes as Black folks, they fall through the cracks because they just don't know how to advocate for themselves along the advocacy line, or they feel like the first diagnosis or they just have to follow what the doctor says. So I know at your clinic you do things a little differently. So what has caused that for you to do things a little differently?
Mm. Exactly what you said. There are a lot of individuals out there that felt like there wasn't a safe enough place for them to advocate for themselves and say, "No, actually, I'm not feeling that. I'm not behaving in that way. That's not how I see that." Um, and so, I'm more than just a symptom. I'm struggling navigating systems that are designed against me. Um, and I want to make sure every person who comes through our doors at August Rose feels seen, heard, and valued as a human being. For example, I am Della first. I am Della before I am a diagnosis. I am Della before I am a founder or CEO. I'm Della before I am a therapist. And just creating those safe enough places so that individual isn't fragmented into the diagnosis, symptom, the medication, treatment plan. Now you're more than that. You're if that process is so impersonal. And so I've been really intentional about making sure that when someone comes through our doors, they are addressed as their first name. Right. So something as simple as saying, hey. But then you have a friendly, comforting voice on the other side of that phone call or on the other side of that appointment desk when you're scheduling with our admin assistants. You have someone that has been in your shoes, has navigated those systems, and or is really compassionate and empathetic towards what your journey has been in life, because your journey is unique to you. And we want to make sure that you're empowered at all times by receiving culturally responsive care. But then beyond that, human care, right? You're a human being first. And we all know what it's like to feel like someone is rushing us through our appointments, or is not really listening to what we're saying, as our own experience, and is really not creating the safety we need to advocate for ourselves. And safety is key there. Safety, dignity, and really practical support as well. We don't need these massive, like, sometimes, hey, I just need that connection to that food bank. Or, hey, can you show me where that food bank is? Because I'm hungry right now, and that's why I'm so irritated. My blood sugar is low. I haven't had my diabetes checked in forever. Or I didn't even know I had diabetes, and that's causing irritation. I didn't know that vitamin D levels can cause low vitamin D levels can cause, or correlate with depression. I didn't know these things. Hey, like, practical support and education, that's not condescending or, disrespectful of who you are and what your journey has been.
Wow, that was a lot. One of the things you just said is education. So how do you educate the members of the community who come in seeking services? How do you educate them as adults as well as adults who might be working with their children?
Mm. So naturally, it always depends on what comes up. So during our first intake appointment, it's usually scheduled for about 2 hours, because we just don't know what's going to come up. And we want to, again, make sure that everybody has that time to share what their journey has been, because we're honored to walk alongside that individual. And so at that intake, we're asking questions. We're explaining what the limits of confidentiality are, what our ethics and morals are here as an organization. And then we're asking questions, but then also explaining what the question is. For example, if we're talking about different types of trauma, hey, I'm gonna tell you what trauma is, and it's not just going to war. It's not just experiencing some levels of community violence. It could also be things like experiencing hurricanes, like Hurricane Katrina, and that being a traumatic experience, 9/11, COVID, things like that. Sometimes people don't think it's traumatizing experiences, and they really are, and they do. It can have an impact on our emotional stability. So every question, we're explaining it in kind of in a human way, and in language that matches where that individual is, if that makes sense. So we're not presenting as condescending. And then once the intake is completed, then we are offering you information packets on that diagnosis, the symptom presentation, and treatment recommendations based upon that diagnosis. I should say, before all of that, we also are asking, we use evidence-based assessment tools. Our clinicians do when they're completing the assessments, and we're explaining to you, hey, this is showing levels of mild depression, or this is showing anxiety here. This is what this looks like. And then we monitor as you continue your course of treatment with us. And for education, I should say diagnosis education packets that get sent to the patient portal or printed out in the individual's preferred language. So we do offer education packets in English and in Spanish. And then any other language that may come up, we are able to get those translated. Once that is done during your first individual counseling service, your clinician is going over, even again, what their license level is, what that means for them if they're under somebody else's clinical supervision, what the difference is between social workers but instead of counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, and things along those lines. And as you walk through our office spaces, there's corners of education, resource connection in our office as well. And again, any one of our staff individual would be able to pull aside to ask a little bit more information.
So what is going on outside of the door? Like, what is your outreach?
Mm. Yeah, so as an organization, we are very intentional about being in the community. Yes, as a vendor, as a community sponsor. And so we do a lot of mental health fairs, just as an example, education, or back to school nights to educate parents on counseling services in the area, the signs to look for if they're concerned with their child potentially struggling with depression, ADHD, things along those lines, even to an extent, suicidal ideation, and providing those education packets too. So we do go into the school systems, and then as far as our own community events, every year we do our Child Mental Health Awareness Week, and then we're also doing our community wellness event in August for our anniversary, where we have different mental health vendors. Really, it's vendors based upon the 8 dimensions of wellness. Again, that challenges us to see that whole person. And so for us at August Rose, that's probably also why our intakes are so lengthy. We quite literally are looking at, yes, your DSM symptom presentation, but then also the 8 dimensions of wellness looks at what your financial wellness looks like. That looks like your spiritual wellness. And we do not prescribe or promote one denomination over another. But we also look at what, practices you may be using to support your mental health. So spiritual wellness, environmental wellness, what does your natural living environment look like? And what impact does that have on your emotional stability and your overall wellness? There are a couple. Educational wellness. What resources can we get you connected to or systems so you can continue your education? Or if there's grant opportunities, adult learning opportunities in your area. Intellectual is so important. I'm always forgetting one or two. But we look at the 8 dimensions of wellness, and then we provide resources to the community based upon those dimensions of wellness.
Awesome. Let's unpack environmental wellness because that's a term I haven't heard before. So, what does that mean?
Mhm. Yeah, so it does. Environmental wellness quite literally looks at where that person is living and how they describe the impact of their living environment on their mental health. And so, for example, an individual that really lives in a community that has a lot of violence, that's naturally going to, or it would impact that individual's kind of fight or flight or trauma responses that they may not even be aware that they're having. Like example, if you're walking through your neighborhood and you're in this kind of hypervigilant state and you're always looking around, well, that's because of your living environment. But then it can also be, just as an example from a PRP perspective, within your home, if it's a really for example, a disorganized living environment, that could be a reflection of your symptom presentation. That could be a reflection, just as an example, of ADHD or even depression, or if things are too disorganized or even too organized. That could be some level of OCD there, what's going on. And so looking at how your symptoms present in your natural living environment, but then also in the reverse, looking at how your living environment is impacting your
Awesome.
emotional stability.
One of the things I always hear when I talk to people about mental health is, well, Black people don't get that. How do you fight back at that stereotype that, well, Black people don't get this type of mental illness?
Give me an example. They don't get what?
I've heard Black people don't get schizophrenia. Black people don't get bipolar disorder, for example. Bipolar, they don't get depression. Some I've heard, just prayed away. So many examples of, Black people just don't get that.
That's why I think this podcast is so important, because you're giving voice to those individuals that may not have had that voice or a space to say, you know what, there's more going on with me that I do get. I am having these symptoms. I am having these experiences that I'm not able to put language to, or I'm not able to feel safe enough to share my experiences with family, with friends, with the community. So I would say that I think representation matters. And so me, first as a Black owned, woman owned business owner of a mental health organization, says, hey, no, we do get that. We do struggle with depression. We do struggle with bipolar disorder, anxiety, schizophrenia, and so on. We do. And praying it away, prayer, especially from a spiritual wellness perspective, can be a really helpful part of your coping strategies and practices. So yes, prayer can absolutely help. However, let's balance that with making sure that we're receiving care for our mental health and going to therapy and going to a psychiatrist or a psychologist for additional support, because um, let's look at the whole person and the whole system. And prayers is one part that we can use, but we also need to get into services. So I think um, I think awareness, I think promoting, I think representation helps, and then also education too. um, Now, everyone will not, unfortunately, we do not live in a world where everyone will just begin to accept, but we can kind of bring forth conversations to normalize what mental health is, what mental illness is, and the strategies that we can use to promote emotional stability. We all cope. We all cope. Some of us cope by ignoring that things are happening. Some of us cope by using deep breathing techniques, by using meditation and mindfulness practices, by engaging in medication management services. So we all cope. We just all maybe do it a little bit differently. And if we challenge ourselves to tie that into our emotional stability, maybe then we'll begin to see that there is a little bit more going on, and that can be labeled anxiety, depression, and so on.
I have to be honest. There are days when I wake up and I say, I'm fine. I do not have bipolar disorder, right? I just wake up and be like, I'm good. I am cured, right? And I know there's not a cure, but there are times where I feel like the medication is working so well that I should stop taking it. And I'm sure there are others out there that feel the same way. I've spoken to others who do, and I don't know why I keep taking my medicine, because sometimes I'm just like, I don't need it
Mm-hmm.
anymore. So how do you help people who may seem like, oh, I'm fine
Mm-hmm.
now? Why do I have to keep doing
Mm-hmm.
this?
So with medication management services, I always like to say that the medication is there to help balance what may be going on internally or neurologically, right? And so when we stop taking our medication, our levels may go down, and then we end up back to where we started. And sometimes a little bit worse than where we started. And so let's continue to take our medication to maintain that balance, because it's working. So let's stay right there. And I think that there are some, how do I say it? I think that there is some frustration with having to take medication every day. And I think that we can begin to challenge ourselves to have conversations around what that looks like too. My medical director over here, August Rose, she would, I know that she would say it's similar to taking medication to manage our blood pressure or our diabetes or our cholesterol. We don't want to, but it's in our best interest to make sure that we do, so that we can maintain those levels and a live a successful life.
Yeah, like part of the reason why I do take it is because I know what was life before medication, and I always
Mm-hmm.
joked to people like, there's like before medication Gerron and post medication Gerron, two completely different people. Post medication
Mm-hmm.
Gerron's a lot. I think I'm a lot better as a person by comparison.
Mm-hmm.
There are days where I have my worst days than others, but I think overall I'm a much better
Mm-hmm.
person. But how my next question is, how do you measure success? Because I think I'm a much better person now, but I don't know if I'm more of a success, right? So how do you measure success
Mm.
in a client?
So at August Rose in general, we use a very person-centered approach to treatment planning. And I think the average clinic would manage success by symptom reduction. We use our PHQ-9s, our GADs, our Columbia Suicide Risk Assessments, all of those things, and be like, okay, they're less symptomatic. And for the average clinic, that would be um, That would be their definition of success. For us at August Rose, it really does look like a restoration of hopefulness and empowerment in that individual, a purpose. That individual is feeling like life is possible again, especially if they are in, for example, a deep state of depression, and they are struggling with managing that. But hopefulness, a restoration of dignity and pride within themselves. And so that the client is the one that tells us that we're successful and that they're looking forward to life. They've received a level of stability, support, resource connection, and they feel empowered again and want to move forward with life.
Good. You mentioned the word dignity about 5 times today. So why is that word so important to your clinic?
Dignity, because you're a human being first, right? You're not just a number. And I want you or any client that comes through the doors to understand that we see them. We see them. We're not trying to harm them in any way or take advantage of who they are, what they've gone through, or what resources we can, whatever. We don't do that. They are to be honored and respected, and we are happy to be along their journey and honored to walk alongside them. So just treating an individual with a level of dignity by even just saying their name, um, remembering their birthday, right? Remembering what their struggle is and remembering that it's hard enough to ask for help for, especially in the mental health field, for an illness that people can't look at you and see that you have depression or you have anxiety, you have bipolar disorder, you have schizophrenia. People can't look at you and tell. So it's hard enough to ask for help for something that is invisible, right? And so just making sure that we're honoring that person at all times. And that's dignity, honoring another person.
So in my line of work in student affairs, we have the saying, meet students where they are. So it sounds like at your clinic, you are meeting people where they are in their moment of need and treating them like they're humans. Like we have in the advising specifically, we have holistic advising. You have holistic meeting them where they are. You see the full person. That's awesome. So let me ask this along the dignity lines. And let's take it back to the red tape. So what did you see that showed you the lack of dignity that made sure that you want to see the dignity?
What did I see? I'm trying not to throw trying not to throw any system on or company under the bus. I think what I saw was an emphasis on the productivity of clinicians or providers to meet a certain quota, right? And we have quotas here. We do have, we still have a company to run. We got bills to pay, lights to keep on, all of those things. But when that client needs that extra support, creating a work environment that can support that and creating a company that balances the productivity, being scalable while also remembering that there are human beings that need our support. And when they're coming in with a crisis or when they need that extra time, that we have a cushion enough within our organization to create space for that and not just kind of move on to the next billable service.
Yeah, when I moved to the state of South Carolina and I got that first bill, I called up my insurance company. It was like, why is this so high? And they're like, oh, that's because you haven't met your deductible. I said, well, I lived before, I didn't have deductible. And they were like, well, welcome to the state of South Carolina. And I have the highest insurance plan that I could possibly have. So how do you work with insurance companies to insure or assure, not sure which one, my PhD is not in English, to make sure that your clients have what they need?
So ahead of time, when a client can self-refer to us, so they're giving us their insurance information, and we're checking ahead of time what if we're covered under their insurance, we don't accept all insurances. So if we do not, then we do offer them an opportunity to self-pay and to self-pay on a sliding fee scale as well. But with that client, we do have our admin assistants that say, these are your current benefits. This is what your copay will be. Is that something that you're comfortable with? And then we'll, do the payment system if they are and sign any of the agreements. If our fees are a little bit too high, then we will provide resources to that client for other providers in the area. We cannot speak to what their systems are and so on, but we will, again, with that education part of it, we'll say this is what your insurance agency is telling us is what's going to happen if we continue to bill this particular billing code. And over the course of the next 6 months, we anticipate your cost for care being this. And then we'll revisit it again in 6 months so that person knows ahead of time what their out-of-pocket expenses will be to the extent that their insurance agency gives us that information.
Awesome. So let's talk about what people see when they walk into August Rose. So how does you design your office to be the most welcoming it could be?
I love our office space. It does. It's so intentional about making sure it doesn't feel like an institution or a hospital with hard chairs and furniture that just is uncomfortable to sit in for the 45-minute session and so on. And so when you come to our front desk, kind of sign into services, it quite literally feels like a living room. And when I say we've had individuals come in and fall asleep, yes, after a long day, but then also out of just pure comfort in our office space, and actually want to stay a little bit longer to just hang out because some of the spaces, but if there's something going on in the conference room, it might not be as quiet, but just to be able to sit back and do their homework. We've had kids come over from after school to say, hey, I just want to do my homework in a quiet space before I go home. Okay, no problem. Go over there in the in that room, and it feels like a living room. Each of our therapy rooms are set up in the same way as well, where again you have the sofas, soft furniture, and also each community, I should say, our culture is represented within our office decor as well. And then the soft lighting and aromatherapy in each of the office suites, so it doesn't smell like a hospital setting or bleached. And so it's really warm and comfortable, and everyone compliments us on it.
I had no idea how important the smell of a place was until we got one of them scented diffusers that smells like a hotel. Changed my life, completely life-changing. Completely life-changing, and oh my God, this just completely life-changing. So
I was so curious what scent it was.
I forgot the scent, to be honest with you, but it's crazy. So it seems like the space was intentionally created to just be more than just a place people go in and out of. It's a place where people can feel welcomed. You said that you stop by and say, hey, I just want to do homework. So was that something that you wanted to see, or was that just happened to happen?
Yeah, no, I wanted it that way. It's very intentional about designing the space in that way. We naturally, the harder furniture, I should say, is cheaper. But we invested in the furniture here so that people felt like they were coming home. And it felt like almost like a grandmother's hug. I've said that since the beginning over the last 8 years. I want individuals that walk through August Rose to feel like they are coming home to their grandmother and baking cookies after school or something along those lines. Just really comfortable and accepting of who you are and where you are in your life on your journey, because it's yours. In the same way our grandmothers would like cheer us on and, oh, that's my baby. We want the same kind of feel here at August Rose, as we're cheering you on as you're managing your mental health.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I think that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard, to be honest with you. So years from now, when people walk by 10, 15 years from now, what do you want their thoughts to be if someone who's younger now, maybe as a kid, 10, 15 years from now, telling someone about their experience with your clinic, what do you want them to say?
They cared. I know that's so simple, but they cared. They showed up for me. They taught me how to embody who I really am as a person beyond a diagnosis. They taught me how to have better relationships, whether intimate, family relationships, professional relationships. They took their time teaching me to be the best version of myself that I have chosen to be, right? They didn't try to push me in one direction or another. And that helped me develop more confidence in who I am and have more pride in who I'm becoming or who I have become 15 years down the line. And so they truly intentionally cared and showed up for me. That's what I want individuals to say about August Rose. I also want them to say they had an intentional impact on the community. They saw where there was a need and they worked to develop partnerships to fill that need. And they have had an impact on the community for generations to come. I think there are some generational differences in managing mental health. And August Rose was the organization that helped bridge the understanding, but then also impacted a family's capacity to address mental health for generations to come. Hey, this person is struggling with schizophrenia. And August Rose was safe enough to educate that family so that if it were to pop up in the family again, they know what the signs, the symptoms, and the resources are on how to get help for schizophrenia, for anxiety, for depression, for suicide, for all of those things, right? I came to August Rose and I was angry about where things I didn't know were impacting me. And I was able to unpack that and reorganize that and have a better relationship with my children, a better relationship with my boss, even if he or she is somebody that's impacting us. And so that's what I want, that we cared and we were safe and we showed up.
And you showed up.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not forget that part. That's very important. So you said something about bridging generations. So Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z are pretty much all adults. Gen Z is becoming adults in their youth that you work with probably at this moment, and some of Gen Alpha are youth. How do you bridge that gap working with so many different generations? How are you attentive to all those different needs?
They all do have different needs. I think some want to be able to power through and not acknowledge that there is more going on there, that there is that depression, there is that anxiety, and that, maybe you wouldn't be so angry if, we unpack some of this. There is that generation that just wants to be left alone and not address mental health at all. There's also that generation that has been intentional about making sure people know that they're struggling and they're putting a voice to it and putting words to it. And I love that. I think that it's recognizing that each generation, I'm going to lean back into the word safe. They want to be safe enough to explore what is going on with them internally without judgment. Whether you are 100 years old or you're 10 years old, you want to know that you are safe and that person that is listening to you is not going to be condescending, disrespectful, or judgmental of what your experience has been. And I think when you're able to do that by listening, actively listening without judgment, and actively seeing who that person is, hearing them, and listening to their journey. We have our assessment tools. We have our specific questions that can help us highlight, okay, well, there's some pain here, right? There's some more work to do here. But we can only do that if we're intentional about listening to each other with the goal of bridging and healing. If sometimes people go into conversations and they're not trying to heal that, they're not trying to heal, or be safe. They want to have their feelings heard and their feelings validated and so on. Well, as a clinician myself, but then also within the organization, saying, no, we're going to hold on. Let me hear your point of view. Our point of views may be different, but you're still safe enough to be different here.
Mm. I think
Mm-hmm.
everyone is different, but everyone's also afraid to be different. And it's scary, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
if we all realized we were different, the world would be a lot better, in my opinion. I know you lived in a few different places. So what has been your favorite place to live?
You know what? I'm going to flip that question and say that my favorite place to visit has been Utah. And I want to live in Utah. And so when I retire one day, hopefully in the next couple of years, it will be to Utah. I lived in Rhode Island, New Jersey, Maryland, and I visited a lot of places, but Utah has been my favorite.
Okay. Is it because of the Mormons?
No. It is because of Zion National Park. I enjoy being outside. And so I have wanted to move back so I could spend more time in Zion.
That is awesome. Only place I've been to White Sands National Park, which is unbelievable, and the Grand Canyon. Those are the only two places I've been out west. Grand Canyon looks fake. Like, if I don't know if you've been, it looks fake. You go there and you're just like, is that a picture or a poster that hanging up in front of my eyes? It just looks so fake. So now I'm gonna turn it over to you just to ask me any questions that you want to know.
I will ask you the same thing. You've lived in a lot of places as well. So what was one of your faves and why?
I would say it's a toss up between Atlanta and Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
I think Atlanta is a very special place. It holds a special place in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Richmond also is, I think I really became who I am in Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, where I started my medication and where I was just like, okay, I know who I want to be,
Mm-hmm.
and I know I know I can become that person finally. So that
Mm-hmm.
all started in Richmond.
Wonderful. If you could, mm, when it came to navigating the mental health system, right? Kind of what were some changes that you are hoping to see in the future?
Um, I think I would love to see just more intentional questioning. I think sometimes questioning can be very vague and leave people wanting more answers, leave people with more questions than they have answers. I know I'm going through something now where my psychologist is like, maybe you have a OCD. I'm like, maybe. And, you want to trust your psychiatrist. And I'm just like, I don't quite think it's OCD, but, we'll explore it. We've only talked about OCD, once for 20 minutes. And so I don't know how that works. With a bipolar diagnosis, it took months to figure that out. And I'm like, how can we determine something so quickly? But, you want to trust that person. But at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, it's just like, let's take the time to really figure this out. I think the healthcare system, it doesn't want to take time. It wants to give
Mm-hmm.
you that immediate answer.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. It does want to give you that immediate answer. And so, do you feel like, and do you mind me asking if you've been with the same provider? I'm all in your business now, but have you been with the same provider for some time?
Yeah, I've been with this one since I moved to South Carolina.
Okay. Okay. And do they have, kind of, are you able to, do they use any evidence-based tools to make those assessments?
Not not that I
Okay.
know of for the OCD, but
Mhm.
again, that could be a question I should ask next time I speak to them.
Definitely make sure that you're asking and advocating. This is your journey, right? And so you know how things are showing up for you and how they are presenting for you in your day-to-day life. And you deserve to be a part of your treatment. And when I say that, I mean your voice is what should be guiding it, not in the reverse. Now they are the subject matter expert. They went to, they went to school for the medications and things along those lines for sure. But it should be a collaborative experience as you are navigating um, your mental health journey. And so, with that being said, what was the kind of defining moment where you were like, "Hey, I need to call and ask for a little bit more help"?
Uh, oh man. I was dating someone and shit just went far left. And she was just like, hey, what you're doing, what you're experiencing is not normal. Like, there's just, we can't figure this out. You're in therapy, it's not working. You need a little more help. Because at this point, I was in therapy for a long time. Like, at least at this point, maybe 2 years of therapy. And things weren't like emotionally, I was getting better, but like things I was doing, I still couldn't explain, or I'm just like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Right. I was like, I literally have no idea what's going on. Like my brain was just doing things that I didn't want it to do. And she was just like, that's not normal. Shout out to her. No, not mentioning her. She unblocks me when she gets single. So, but I'm not responding this time. Not gonna respond this time. Um, just saying, if you hit me up, it wasn't my fault.
do, you, do you feel like your family and friends at the time were supportive of you reaching out for help and were open to having conversations about mental health?
Surprisingly, they were. I didn't think they would be,
Mhm.
but I should have known better because most of my friends at this point had known me for years.
Mhm.
And they've seen me at my worst. My family have seen me at my worst. They've seen drug-induced mania from me,
Mhm.
um, where they probably didn't have a name for it. They probably thought this man is just really drunk.
Mhm.
But looking back, that's what it was. Um, and they were just like, well, we love you. You know, we understand that you have this, you're going through it, you're seeking help. So it's not like you're saying you have bipolar disorder. Oh, well, I'm not going to seek help. It's like you're
Mhm.
actively doing something. You're taking your medication. You're going to therapy. You're speaking with your psychiatrist frequently.
Mhm.
So if they were like, we love you, keep seeking help.
Mhm. Mhm. I love that and it's hard. Sometimes it's hard for the family to know what to do. So kind of would you say that when it comes to what family members can do to support an individual that has received a mental health diagnosis, what would be your kind of key or advice that you would give to family?
Educate yourself. It's just not enough to say I love you. I think it's important. I don't know how far my family and friends have gone, but if you listen to this and you're my family and friends, um, just educate yourself a little more about it. Just say, you know what, let me just Google what it is, right? Because we all have our surface level, oh, it's mood swings. It's people get sad, people get happy, they do things, right? They have impulses. But it's a lot deeper than that. Um, and there's levels to it. So just really educate yourselves on the disorders that's going on, even if it's like anxiety or
Mm-hmm.
depression. Just educate yourself on whatever that person is having. Pick up a book. There is a book, I can't think of the name
Mm-hmm.
of it. It might be called Understand Bipolar Disorder. It's a big, thick blue book on bipolar disorder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Education is key, creating that safety, and safety to have that conversation with that individual. And I love that you give them the book ahead of time to be like, this is, and I think sometimes people personalize what someone else is going through, when it may be a symptom, like, hey, this is a symptom I'm experiencing. It's not a result of us or a relationship and so on. It's a symptom, and this is just how it shows up for me. So I love that you're creating the opportunity for that person to really be able to connect, and then you're showing that level of vulnerability to say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing right now. It's not you. This is what I'm experiencing. So I love that. I do. If there were anything that, well, no, I don't want to ask it. How do you feel about support groups? As an individual with a mental health diagnosis, how do you feel about support groups?
Ooh, that's a good one. Huh. I think because my group counseling class, I had such a bad experience. And then when I took that class, I am not a fan of support groups because of the individual experience that I had, where someone was like, my presence made them uncomfortable. And I talk about it in a different podcast episode, so I won't go in detail here. Um, but essentially, this Middle Eastern student said my presence there made them uncomfortable because obviously the reason I was a Black male. Um, and since then, I was just like, I can't do groups because it's going to be something similar that's going to happen. You know, I might be open to finding a Black group, and that's part of this podcast is there are no Black male groups for this. I would love to see that. I would love to see the formation of that. Even doing my PhD study, you know, there was hard to find participants because there's so many people that were willing to talk about it.
Mm. I'm sorry that you went through that. Did the group, well, I'm gonna leave it alone, but I hope the group facilitator handled that because it should be safe for everyone.
I think everyone's face was shocked. They were like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the biggest dude, like,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm pretty friendly. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm very friendly. I'm a very friendly person. So
Mm-hmm.
like people would just like you. I just feel bad for the people she has to work with, and I pray to God that she doesn't have to work with Black people. I pray to God that there are a lot of people who want to help who do not have to work with Black people. But that's just
Mm-hmm.
my personal opinion. Hopefully she's gotten better, but people like her, I doubt it. If you can't, if someone who's on equal footing as you,
Mm-hmm.
you see as a threat, what are you going to see? Has someone who you have power over.
Mm-hmm. So then that leads me to another question. Um, what advice would you give to mental health professionals? Mm-hmm.
Take your time. It's okay to take your time, right? To really say, you know what? We're not going to get through this on the first day. You know, you're presenting this. This is maybe what we're going
Mm-hmm.
to start you with based on what you're saying, but we're not going to give you everything at once. We're going to say this. We're not going to tell you what your diagnosis
Mm-hmm.
is day one. We're going to say, this is what symptoms you're presenting. This is usually what we give to people who are presenting these symptoms, or this is what. So this we're going to see
Mm-hmm.
if this helps. Then if it starts to help, we can talk more about what's going on as we get to know each other. But really just take your time, People have been struggling for a very long time, and they do want the answers. And I think oftentimes, like I said before, people are quick to give an answer or quick to just give something because they feel like, oh, this person must be dying to figure out what's wrong with them. And a lot of times, like, they'll just get something and they'll have the medicine may have an ill effect or the therapy may not work properly. Then they're going to be put off. They're going to say, well, I'm not going back. This medicine, this medication, or this therapy style didn't work for me, so I'm just not going to go back. And that's because we're saying you're having this problem, but I'm going to say it's this problem over here when it's something deeper. So obviously you only see clients in Maryland, but if someone wanted to reach out just to see how things are done or take a browse at your website or just learn more about your center, how can they do that?
Yeah, so they can go on our website, AugustRoseHealthCenter.com, and our contact information is listed on there. They can also look at our social media accounts on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So we give updates as to what's going on there.
Awesome. So make sure you check them on all their platforms, visit their website, and if you're in the state of Maryland, you can get connected with them for services. And if you're not in Maryland, still check them out. They're doing great things. And thank you so much, Della. I appreciate it. You are amazing. You've always been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's our time in the garden today. If this conversation resonated with you, or if it helped you feel a little less alone in the fog, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. This has been Black and Diagnosed with Gerron Scott. If you'd like to contact me or share your story, you can reach me on Instagram at g.scott, GDOTSCOTT, or info@gerronscott.com. Make sure you subscribe to get the newest episodes when they drop. Be well, and I'll see you back in the garden soon.